Welcome, everybody. This is Jason, and this week we have a special guest presenter, William. He's done a previous workshop, but this one specifically is about SimPe's BHAV editor. So, William, tell us what we're going to learn.
Who knows? We're demystifying. So the idea of this is to demystify the SimPe BHAV, whatever. We'll look at that in a minute. Editor. Basically, the thing that's on the screen, what all those buttons do, and the lines mean, and what a node version is, and it's about the toolbox that you use to write code, not the code, if that makes sense. I'll be hopping between the slide deck and SimPe itself because some things are a lot easier to demonstrate in the tool, so I'll be faffing around between screens, but a few slides to start with. So what's in a name? We have BHAVs or behaves or behaviors or even trees. They're all actually the same thing. The code that is executed within the game is called a behavior because it makes Sims behave. Its short name is BHAV, which some people pronounce BHAV or behave or whatever. From a programming point of view, an instruction has one of two outcomes, true or false. You can go left or right. If you go left, that leads to another instruction which can go left or right, and if you keep drawing that in your head, you end up with this sort of upside down tree structure of leaves and things. So behaves are also known as trees, and being programmers, we never use any term consistently. So in SimPe, you'll see it called a tree, you'll see it called a behavior, you'll see it called a BHAV. Things. Behaves functions. Yeah, they probably are. Methods, same things. Interchangeable term. If I call something a function or a method, it just means a group of instructions being executed together. What makes up a function or a method? Well, again, interchangeable words. A node, an entry, a line, or an instruction. So if I flick over to SimPe, this thing here, highlighted blue, it's a line, it's an instruction, it's the second entry, and because it's part of a tree, it's also a node. So go figure, could we just call them one thing, please? Yeah, that would be good. Back to the slideshow wherever I hit it. We also have primitives or opcodes. These are these things. This prim 02 here, global OE 03EA, gets set over there. So that is an opcode. It's a low number kind of coding. It's a primitive. If it's a high number, it's a call to another behave. Subroutine call, it's a method call. All primitives are opcodes, but not all opcodes are primitives, so it's not quite an interchangeable term. It's close. And then we have operands. Operands are the things which we have over in this area where it says operands. There are 16 little boxes. I was trying to think of a way to explain that. The things that varies how a opcode or a primitive works. I was doing my washing earlier, so I want a 2-hour warm wash. Well, how warm do I want it at? I've got a little dial that will set it to 20, 30, 40, 50 degrees. What do I want it to spin at? Do I want it to spin at 800, 1200, 1600 RPM? The temperature setting and the spin speed are your operands. They are things that just vary slightly the overall operation of what you're doing. So my first question from Latmos was, what are these? Up the top, format, tree type, header flag, tree version, cache flags. What do they do? To be honest, very little. Why are they there? They do very little. Good question. Do they edit the BHAV as a whole or just for the active selective instruction? They all are applied to the BHAV as a whole. These are probably here because they are part of the BHAV block that gets decoded, and the programmers that wrote SimPe probably thought that they'd be useful to be able to see, but most of the times they are confusing. Only one of them is of any interest, and that is format. So I got very bored and I dug through all the different formats. So the format is flavor, a version of the BHAV, and there are 10 of them from 0x800, 8000 to 009. Depending on the version that you're in, you get a different number of operands. The node version may or may not work. You can have a different maximum number of lines. There's something called cache in there. They just make it work differently. I ran through every single BHAV in the base game and all the expansion packs, and that is the count of how often they occur. The most interesting comment on here is the version they apply to. If you are writing a mod for the base game, you can only use format up to 8006. If you go above that, the game won't understand it and it will crash. If you're writing for university, again, you can only go up to 8007. If you're writing for nightlife or above, which, let's face it, is most of us. I think even Andrew Gloria has nightlife, so let's face it, that's the entire world. You can use any of the formats. So it's only really of a concern if you're making a mod compatible with base game university. As I note there, if you actually change this value to something else, so we go from 8007 to 8009, that does not actually guarantee that SimPe will save that correctly. It has been known to mess up. If you wanted to go to a different format for some reason, you wanted cache flags or node versions to work, whichever one that introduces, then it's probably better to find a BHAV that is that format, clear all the instructions out and bring your old BHAV in and change its format that way, rather than just changing that drop down. So basically, don't mess with them. So what are the others? They're all explained on Mod the Sims info wiki page. The tree type is deprecated. It's a Sims 1 feature. It's no longer used. The header flag is deprecated. It's a Sims 1 feature. It's no longer used. Tree version seems to be a way of saying that this was the first version of a BHAV, then they changed it and it was the second and the third and the fourth. It's standard version control. They're calling it a tree here, it's a BHAV version. It pops up in the log files, but again, it's probably deprecated or of only any use to the Maxis development software. Cache flags, apparently they are used, but there is no documentation on them anywhere, and there are only 26 Max BHAVs that actually use those, and if you are interested in them, that is the complete list. Leave it as an exercise to the user to go off and investigate what they might possibly be for. There's no rhyme nor reason. Some it's a value of 1, some it's 7, some it's 8, some it's C, you know, and there's really no rhyme nor reason as to what they're applied to. Memories, random menu, am I carrying a sim? Probably something that Maxis thought was a good idea, but probably never never used them. So, any questions on question 1 before I move on to next things? Okay.
Why did the creators of SimPe leave that in?
Because they probably at the time didn't know what was useful and what wasn't. When you look in a package file and you find a BHAV resource, you can decode it, and that information is there. And they probably thought it might be of use. We don't know, because when they were first writing this, they didn't know everything. It's one of these things that's just got left behind. It's like I said, if you started from fresh, you probably wouldn't display it prominently, if at all, or you'd have it on an advanced mode where you just shoved it off to one side. But it's this hindsight is wonderful. Oh, it's no use. So well, we haven't taken it out.
Right, yeah. I mean,
somebody might find it useful.
someday someone might find a use for it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, moving swiftly onwards. Control flow. I have just picked up a random BHAV out of the objects.package file here. And you start reading this and you think, oh yeah, I'm going from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 until I get to a decision point, and then I go. And actually what you start realizing is that after we've gone and executed line 0, this is saying that if it returns true, we're going to go to line 5. I don't know if you know, but you can click the little blue things to jump down to the lines. And then after that we'll do line 6. Well, that's fairly sensible. And now we go back to line 1. Really? Okay. Don't know why Maxis left them like this, but you can also see that we've got the arrows down the side. Now there is a very, very nice button on SimPe called Sort. If you click that, it will do its best attempt to sort the code into its most logical flow. If we click that, you can now see we are going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to exit. If you're ever looking at a Maxis BHAV, first thing you do, click the sort button. Otherwise you'll start reading the code and you will have read through. I'm just going to close this down and reopen it. You would not believe the number of times that I've gone, oh yeah, the next logical instrument, so we set local naught to stack object, and now we set the stack object ID to something else, and then we set the stack object ID to something different. Well, why did we do that? Okay. And I've missed out half a dozen instructions here. So yeah, the sort button is incredibly useful little button to logically look at how things flow. You still want to check the arrows going down, still need to check where the true exits are. So if this thing returns a false, we return true out of the code. Yeah, sort button. Cool. I'll see if I can find one. I think. See what. Sure if I can find any code that's got unreachable. If I break this so that I'm now returning true out of here, I can no longer get to this line, and you'll see there's a black arrow coming in. That's unreachable code. So that this line of code can never be executed. It's not another point where code could start from. Code in a BHAV always starts at line 0. Always. No exceptions. It just means that this code is completely redundant and can never be reached. If I do bizarre things and set that to a line that doesn't exist, then I will get a little question mark out here as well. So just how we can follow our control flow. And as I've just said, reorganizing sort. Always go for the sort. And sometimes sort can make things worse. Not sure if I can find one easily enough. Probably a good case. I've got all kinds of rubbish in here. I've got an unreachable instruction here. I've got the standard maxis. From 0 we go to 2, and from 2 we go down to A, and dirty. I can sort that. It's not too bad. Yeah, that's quite good. But if I wanted to move things around, I can highlight that, and these little move up and down arrows here will move the selected line up by 1 line. So this manage inventory, if I click go up, will just jump up the line, and all the connectors will will change themselves around. I can just keep moving this up. I change that to so I can manually reorder code and make it sometimes it just makes your own code easier. If I change that to a 5 and I click down, this manage inventory line will go somewhere down to near sub, which timestamp somewhere down here because it will jump 5. And it doesn't reset to 1, so you go, oh, I now need it 1 line. It should have been 6. I want it 1 line further down. You click it again by accident, and it's now 10 lines further on from where it was. Or if you go the other way, and we get to reset it to 1, we've suddenly now made a new entry point into this BHAV and almost certainly broken it. So before you start moving code around, always make sure you have a backup. You're quite happy not to commit file. You can just close it, reopen the BHAV, and there it is all back. So that's the little sort and move lines. Sort is incredibly useful. Move, if I find another, see if I can find one that's slightly interesting. Yeah, let's say I wanted that line from the false return to actually be my quick way out. I could just move this up 2 lines, and that might make it easier for me to read. So, sorting, manual sorting, move. I really don't recommend you change the number of lines you move things up and down from by 1, but it does make your code easier to read. There is a caveat. If you're modifying a maxis BHAV, let me go back to this one. It was in this awful thing. If you had saved your game and one of your sims was halfway through executing this BHAV, save will know that it was on line 3. It won't know that it was about to execute college is nid a frat member. So if you sort this and save it as an override and come back into your game, the game will continue executing that BHAV from line 3, which may or may not break the code and or break the sim and also cause a jump error for the sim. So don't just sort all maxis BHAVs between save games. You might not get the next lot of execution that you expect. It will start from the line it was on, not the instruction it was on. Okay. Questions on moving and sorting. This is an FAQ sort of question session, so feel free to jump in and ask questions as you go along.
Oh, I had a question. When I have the black line that is, it can't be executed or it's not reachable, can you delete that line without penalty or not?
Can, and I will do that when I get onto the differences of deletes.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, good question. You can delete it without penalty or impunity. quite often you'll find a Maxis BHAV that's got 30 or 40 lines in it, and after you've sorted it, the line 1, the second line in the entry, is not reachable because they have replaced the whole thing by a different call to a BHAV, and they've just not deleted all the redundant code. So you can save yourself quite a lot of code sometimes. So, question 2. What is this? Node version. Node version OX. Is it important? Sometimes. Or just there as a note. This node is using version XYZ of the BHAV system. It's not a note, it's actually using, and it changes the functionality of the primitive. So in the way that BHAVs have a format, some of the primitives have a node version. And there are that many of them. So not all of them. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14. Again, if you're writing for specific versions of the game, you wouldn't want to use node version 1, find location for, if you were in seasons or pets, because it only came available with free time. So don't just use the highest node version that's available. If you were to use node version 4 on find location for, it would actually use node version 1. So this is anything greater than will fall back to the one it knows about. Unfortunately, SimPe doesn't actually know what all the differences of these node versions are. And it's not always that node version 1 is an incremental change on node version 0. Sometimes it adds alternatives, so you'll be able to get some options in node version 0 and some options in node version 1. The add change action string and the manage inventory are two classic ones of that. Sometimes you'll be looking for something in a drop down, it's not there, and it's because you're in the wrong node version of that. So let me just put it back to there.
So does that mean that what you're saying about don't just use the highest node version, does that mean that if I want to use find location 4, I should not use node version 4 because there is no node version 4 for that specific primitive?
Yeah, there is no node version 4 for find location 4. If you use node version 4, it would actually use node version 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is all right if you're writing a mod for free time or mansions and gardens, but if you're writing it for pets, that's going to cause I think it's a bad go subtree or something. But some of these are not. I think alter budget is another one. It's not that everything in node version 0 is in node version 1. Sometimes you might have A, B, C, D in node version 0 and A, B, C, E and F in node version 1. And if you're looking for D, you have to know which node version it's in. So don't just set it to the highest one. The easiest way to work out which node version you want is find some Maxis code that does what you want and rip it off.
Yeah.
All for ripping stuff off.
Also, why there's some primitives that have 2 node versions that are from the base game, like relationship has node 0 and 1 that are from the base game both.
Okay, let me see if we can find 1A. Right, so it will use its operands in different orders. So that's node version 0. Unfortunately, from the wizards, you can't change the node version. You have to remember to go back and change it over here manually. Yeah, so node version 1 had many other things. So as it's if you go back and relook at the format table, the base game had formats all the way up to 8005, I think. And the number of operands it supported changed from 8 16. So it could very well be that node version 0 was in the very early versions of the game and only understood the first 8 operands, and then as they changed the BHAV format and introduced another 8 operands to a total of 16, they could make this node more powerful.
So it's like they updated the base game through patches and changed the node version like that.
The base
Through
game,
that?
base game of Sims 2 came from Sims 1, so which I think only had 8 operands. So
Okay.
they obviously then realised that they'd want 16 operands, and they changed it. And they went, oh well, if we're changing from this to that, but if we changed all the alter relationships, we'd have to go back and change all the code, which we know has been tested and quality assured. Yeah. Whereas if we introduce a new node version, we just have to test the new stuff. All the old stuff continues to work.
Is that why there are so many Maxis behaves that the bottom row of operands is just completely empty? It does nothing?
It can be. The expression primitive 2 only uses the top 8 operands. All the others are 0. It just doesn't need that extra 8 bytes of information to add 2 numbers together. Yeah, that's why you'll get a lot of zeros, or sometimes you'll get a lot of FFFFFFFFFFs in there. That's what the node versions are. For those 10 primitives, it actually changes how it operates. So if you were redesigning this UI, you wouldn't call that node version, you'd call it primitive version. This thing is a node, or an instruction, or an entry, or a line. It does change one other thing. This call to a global or a semi-global or a local BHAV itself has a node version. And if I bring up the wizard, if I'm on node version 0 for when I'm calling another BHAV, this caller's params thing over here is grayed out. I change that to node version 1. It's not grayed out. Now I can honestly say I have never actually used that. I know what it's for. It's quite a complex little thing. So it really doesn't matter as to whether you're using node version 0 or 1 when you're calling another BHAV. If you need to pass the caller's parameters, you will remember that you need node version 1. I've given you lots of links to go and follow in time if it's more interesting, or you've have a need for them. And that's just calling the node version. So, not sure if it was asked as a specific question. But while we're dealing with operands and node versions and things, there are 4 buttons over here. Cancel, what I call the hammer and spanner, double quotes, and the X. So, the X is incredibly useful. So when we're looking at insert, if you duplicate a let's do this out of sequence. So I've got my expression here, my primitive 2. I do an insert true. I get an exact copy of that. Now that's fine if I'm sticking an expression, but actually that's a bad example. A better one. So if I duplicate this and insert true, I wanted a distance primitive here, which I believe is 8. 7. My cheat. be as close to an 8. And I put this in. Some of these primitives really hate to have random values in the bottom 8 operands, and they will crash your game, and you will sit there and you will go, why the hell is it crashing at that point consistently? Because you've left some rubbish data in here. It doesn't know what to do with it. It dies. Coding, Maxis. If you click the little X button, it sets all of those operands to 0, which then means that you can bring up Instruction Wizard on the hammer and spanner and set the whatever you want. You can click it, and it will then set the correct parameters. Cancel button does exactly what it says on the tin. It resets what you may have changed on here. Not only does it reset the operands, it also resets the opcode. So if I now cancel this, it will go back to the college's NID, a BRAT member. So that's the, oh my god, what have I done? Oh well, I'll put it back and I'll try again. The other button is, you look at it and you go, oh my word, what's that? And if you start looking at it, the first 2 digits are OA, which is first operand. 0000007FFF. It's all these numbers as a single string. It means if I want to do something, say I want to take the operands from this expression, bring that up, I can copy them, go up to that, clicking cancel, I can go up to that expression, bring that back in, paste them in. I've copied the code in a different manner. It can be a very quick way of copying operands from one piece of code to another. If I'm taking 3 lines or 4 lines out of a Maxis BHAV and I want it in my own, rather than try and do anything clever, I'll just literally jot down what the 4 opcodes I need, what the 4 node versions, and just take the operands over as strings of numbers, and then merge that into my own code. It's kind of into programming, but it's what that button is for. May have a use for it. It's that one. Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, before we dive into special buttons, what is the ARGs thing? I was never clear on that.
ARGs up here.
Yeah, the ARG count, sorry.
Okay, so it's kind of off into the realms of programming, but when you BHAV can receive what is now known as parameters. Yeah, param 0, param 1, param 2, param 3. ARG count is the number of parameters that the BHAV gets. So my ARG count here is set to 0, which means I have none, because I have everything up to but not including that number. So I can't even have param 0. If I wanted param 0, I would have to change that to a 1. This BHAV now has 1 parameter. So when I call it and I bring up this wizard, I would be able to put something in its first entry while calling it, but none of the others. And again, it's where SimPe is like, well, it could have been made a lot easier. This BHAV here takes 2 parameters. You can see that because we've got stack object ID and literal FFFF within parameters. SimPe knows that. It knows these are unused. So it's like, why bother displaying it? It just means that you can think you're putting something in when it's not actually there. And
So
if
the
you thought a
ARGs
B...
is- I'm sorry,
the ARGs is...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
ARGs is short for arguments, which is another word for parameters.
So it's just the number of parameters you can have per behave.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit like the local var count here is the maximum number of locals you can have. Because this is set to 3, you can have local 0, local 1, local 2. If you tried to use local 3, you would get the error which is about bad tree stack number or something. Never remember what the errors are off the top of your head. If you wanted local 3, because the counting starts at 0, you've got 0, 1, 2 and 3, so that's 4 of them. So to get local 3, you actually have to change that to a 4. Yeah. Again, from a UI designer point of view, that should read maximum arg count and it should be set, or maximum local count, and it should be set to 4 if you want local 4, and then internally when I save this I'll just add 1 to it. There are some, SimPe interface is definitely showing its age. Programmers start counting from 0.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
So, question 3. Why are these special? No, they're not. They're not special. They're extra buttons. They're advanced. They're not even advanced. They're things that you need. Why are they there? Good as places anywhere. You've got to stick them on the UI somewhere. To be honest, I probably would have grouped them differently. And what do they do? And that's what we're going to do. Important thing, you enable them by that checkbox. If they're not switched on, just click that special button and then forget you ever clicked it. Just leave them up. So this is where we get into why are there 4 ways to insert code? Oh dear. Right. So we have an add button, we have an insert true button, we have an insert false, and we have an insert unlinked. What do these do? So if I select an instruction and I do the one that you will use most commonly, which is insert true, it duplicates that instruction, so it duplicates the primitive and all the operands. It sticks its copy in after this one and it links it in on the true. So this true is currently going 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. We insert true. We've got an exact copy. Actually, I'm going to pull this out, start again. Now, because I've copied them before, right, we'll do that again. Insert true. Local 2 equals stack objects attribute 1. Yeah, so I've now got another copy. I've got local 2 equals stack objects attribute 1. Perhaps I want this as local 3 equals stack objects attribute 2. But what it's done is it's hooked it off the true return from here and hooked it into the chain. If I take that one, local 0 equals stack object ID, and we do an insert false, which is perhaps the next most common thing I do. Surprise, surprise, it will hook it in off the false. Why would I want to do that? Well, if I'm about to change this expression from an equals to an equality, it's now, if it's true, do one thing, if it's false, do another. What you notice is that it didn't hook up the duplicated instructions false, it hooked up the true. It's always hooking up true. Those are the 2 that you will use the most frequently. Probably, what have I got? 90% of the time I use insert true, 5% of the time I'm using insert false. Insert unlinked. Let's go down here. Is another useful one in that it just inserts your line of code and it doesn't actually link it in. So this is near the frat member is going to my expression. If I do insert unlinked, I get an unreachable line of code, the black arrow, and the previous line was skipping over to 9 and my new line is skipping over. So this is unlinked. It's not linked from anything. Nothing can get to it. You'll have to go back and link it in manually. I wanted, made that 8. Or perhaps it's a point that a loop is coming back to and I want to add some code at the top of the loop and doing something. Probably use that about 5% of the time. It's not the most common one. And then the last one, add, is the singularly most useless one we have. Here I am, different thing, verify person ID, I'm looking at line 3, my attention is on the blue line, and I click add. And suddenly I'm right at the end of the BHAV. How did I get there? I wanted it back up here, kind of round about line 3, so I'm now going to have to move it all the way back up to where I vaguely wanted it. And if you don't have the special buttons enabled, that's your only option. And it's like, okay. So 4 different ways of inserting a line of code. One of them's completely useless. One you probably want is insert true, and then the other 2, insert false and insert unlinked, have their reasons. They are useful, but if you did accidentally do an insert true on that, it's no biggie. You can go back and you can change these numbers back to where they were and change the false target to what you wanted it for. Change these around. So, actually, I've just thought of something. I'm going back here. Delete aside. I duplicated this local 2 equals stack objects attribute 1. If I insert true on that and say I want a local 3 equals stack objects attribute 2, I could, most people will, go into the wizard and change this down to, oh, actually I haven't got a local 3. I can go local 3, stack objects attribute, got local 3, 2. Very useful thing to remember about expressions is the first number there in the operand is those 2 little digits 03. So if I wanted to another one, local 4 equals stack objects attribute 3, I can do an insert true there. I can change that one to 4 and I can change that one to 3, and I've got what I wanted. That is a lot quicker than opening the wizard. Just an aside. So, any questions on the 4 different ways of adding code before we go on to the 3 different ways of deleting code? Take that as a no. Okay, so at least we've only got one less way to delete code than there was to add code. Again, everything operates on the instruction you have actively selected. So, if I delete this, it goes away. It's gone. There is no undo. Make sure you had a backup. But what you've also possibly not noticed is that because I deleted it, the line above is no longer linked into what was it linking to. So this now jumps to a unknown instruction, and this instruction is unreachable. So what I wanted in there was a 2. So delete literally deletes the current instruction without care about linking things up. Now, Pescado, or however you want to pronounce his name, delete, attempts to cope with that logic. So if I use Pescado's delete on there, not only will it take that line out, but anything that pointed to that line will now point to what it points to. So this instruction is pointing to the one I'm going to delete. This instruction is pointing to 3, so this one will jump across. And we're all still up. And I can delete that, and we're all still linked up. Delete that, and we're all still linked up. You would think
That's much handier.
You would think, why would I ever not use it? Oh dear. See if I can find something that's truly horrendous. Here we go. This is truly horrendous. Right. Okay, this remove object instance, stack object ID. Just about everything points to it. Yeah? Pescado's delete on this may or may not work. It may or may not do what you're expecting it to. And it may or may not give you the code you wanted at the end. It's very good when you've just got simple chains of instructions. Yeah, one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. When you are coming to something that is this complicated, this button can cause all kinds of chaos. Because you might not have wanted all of your loops coming back to the next instruction. You might have wanted them returning falses or returning trues, which was what it was doing. So it's kind of can be, well, it is a two-edged weapon. In complicated situations like this, I would go through each of the paths, and you can find the paths because, you know, this red arrow comes down here, comes down there, this one goes to 7. I would analyze this code and go, yeah, this one actually needs to go to 8. I would manually change it, come back up to this line that I want to delete, and I would go through all of them, and I would end up with a piece of unreachable code. I would then use the delete key on it. I would want to know in my own mind that I have linked all the code paths back up to the correct place that I, as a programmer, am expecting them to go, not that some piece of software thinks I want them to go to. So, in a chain, where it's a simple, you know, I don't want this instruction and I just want to knock it out of the chain, feel free, use Pescado's delete. Something way more complex, yeah, take care. And then the last one, delete to end. Oh, and don't forget there's no undo on that either, so if you get that wrong, you're up the creek without paddle. And then the last one literally does what it says on the tin. If I highlight this and I select delete to end, it will delete all the instructions from that point to the end of the BHAV. They've all gone. They've all vanished. What this one can be extremely useful for is in your init functions. I don't want any of them, I'm going to write my own. Yeah. Just wipe out the entire. No, you cannot delete to end even though it's enabled on the first instruction. You cannot remove the first instruction.
This is already the end. I was going to say another useful feature for that might be getting rid of all of that extra Maxis spaghetti code.
Yeah, yeah. Although I prefer to delete those one at a time. See if we can find something slightly longer. It's not uncommon that this would have just returned true and Maxis left a whole load of stuff at the end. But bear in mind, this could be in any order, so you don't know that. Let's move this down. So you go, oh, that's unreachable. I can just from here, I can delete to end. Well, now we've got all kinds of other issues because I've got a code that goes nowhere. If you sit here and you delete that one, next one's unreachable, and you can delete that one, and that's unreachable, and you delete that one. If you're in an init BHAV and you know you do not want any of the following code, then delete to end is great. It's a really quick way of getting shot of stuff, or if you know you just want a clone of a BHAV and you're going to write your own, it's a great way of getting shot of stuff, but it kind of takes the control out of my hands as a programmer. I like to know what I'm deleting and that I actually wanted to delete it, as opposed to just randomly delete 20 instructions.
Right. You would need to verify each instruction before you delete it.
Yeah, and I can just sit here hovering over the delete button and achieve exactly that. I could find it's actually got some code in it. Come on. Oh, for all of you panicking that I'm using objects.package, it is set read-only on my system. I cannot save this even if I want to.
Before we go to the next section, I was going to ask, which is sort of related to the delete buttons, but not quite. You mentioned that the sort button sorts the code in a logical manner. Is it safe to use it all the time, or there's exceptions sometimes?
The insert code.
No,
Sorry.
the sort button.
Oh, the sort is safe.
Okay.
It does its best guess. What it does is it follows down all the trues. So every time you come to a decision, it takes the next true instruction and puts that one after the decision. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see if I can example. And then if that next one is a decision, it will take that true and follow down and follow down and follow down. What it does is it can push all the falses. Yeah. It pushes all the falses to the bottom of the file, all the false paths, and that might not be what you want. You might want, if it's a very simple thing of, if it's adult child, if I'm an adult, go to the adult animation, and then from there go to the next thing. Otherwise, if I'm a child, do the child animation and go to the same thing. So sometimes you want the trues and the falses right next door to each other, and the sort will just push the child animations all the way to the end of the file. And that's why I say sometimes you need to manually and just move them all back up, so it's much more logical.
Okay, so it's sort of like a switch case on when you're writing code. Like you want to organize them by what they're supposed to do in the same logic, and if not, then you can just use the sort button and it will make more sense.
It rarely makes it worse, especially if it's Max's code.
Okay.
It's just if it... Sometimes you'll get in Max's code, if parameter is equal to 1, do this, do something common, return true. Yeah, and then because the false is then below the return true, it will say if it's equal to 2, do this, jump back up the code. If not, check it for 3, do this, jump back up, and you'll find lots of arrows suddenly flying back up your code. When I'm doing the coding, I'll try and find an example for you.
Okay.
But the labels and the TPRP button, so let's check sub notification return time. So you should know that because I wrote this. So this
But does that mean that the code that SimPe is displaying at the start before you use any kind of sort button is the way that the code is interpreted in the game, like Max's leave it in that order?
that's how Maxis left it in the game.
Okay. Interesting.
It doesn't matter because it's not executing in numerical order. It's not going 0, 1, 2, 3. It's taking the outcomes of the true falses and following those through. And that's why I say you end up with spaghetti code, because it's all interlinked, and logically as a human I want to read this like a book down the page. Yeah?
Okay.
Do this, do that, do the other. In fact, this one might sort particularly. This might illustrate. But this BHAV which we wrote, it has 2 arguments, 2 parameters, and it has 2 locals. And as you see here, it says local naught equals parameter naught. But if I go and look over at over here, my local naught is display time hour and my parameter is return time hour. I actually labeled the locals and the parameters, and we can get to those through this TPRP button. Bindingly, obviously, it's called that because the resource that holds labels and parameters is TPRP, and that brings up a different resource editor where I've typed in the names of the parameters and the names of locals, and I can switch back to the BHAV. If I pick one of these that doesn't have parameters, this button is disabled. No, I've got no names. I have to go all the way down here to labels. Click. It goes, you have created labels. It's like, yes, I know I've created labels, and this button is now enabled. And if I knew what these parameters were, I could change them from param0, param1, param2. This is an interaction. This is the object. This is autonomous. Spell. Who knows what parameter 3 is? Who knows what the locals are? I have now given this interaction parameters. So my local naught, oh, it's a copy of a stack object. To stack object. It's still saying local naught here, but over on this side, local naught to stack object. So this means that in 3 or 4 weeks' time, when I come back, I can actually remember what my locals and my parameters were. I strongly encourage you to do this. But why that's labeled TPRP makes no sense. Why the labels button is down here under special buttons. Why I have to click this and then click that. Yeah. And of course the other advantage to doing things parameters is labels. Go out. Display notification. Just change this. Into the wizard. Because I labeled my parameters, it tells me here they are return time hour and return time minutes. So if I can't remember if I was passing hours, minutes, or minutes, hours, because I gave the BHAV labels, it's telling me. So it just makes it so much easier programming. Labels, you want labels. Things init linker. I believe this was one of Jason's. I love this button.
Yeah, because I'm not clear on that one. I have never used it, and I've always been curious as to what it actually does.
Okay, so I've got my init method here. It's specifically designed for init methods, yeah, and I've got movement flags, clear flag, and I've got a my movement flag, clear flag, and I've got a setup controller. But I'd like to do my attributes first, and I'd like these. So actually, I want to initialize the object. Going to do this. My movement flags. I'm going to bring that movement flag up. surface values I tend to put above flags, my flag, setup controller I tend to do at the end, and attributes. And now I've got all of my code all lovely and messed up and spaghettiized. Yeah? But that's logically how I want to do my initialization. That's how I think about it in terms of writing sentences, writing a book. You then click ings init linker. It literally links them all in order, and the last one returns true. It's magic.
So it's like sort, but it has the extra feature of making sure that all of the command lines are linked and that they return true.
No, it's the complete opposite of sort. I have manually decided in which order I want my initialization, because they're almost always expressions in a subroutine call.
Oh.
So I've completely messed this thing up now, and I've turned it into spaghetti.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What it's going to do is it's going to keep the order. So I'm going to put my movement flag 2 above 4. Yeah, I tend to put flags in numerical order. So it's got these. When I press ings init linker, it's going to literally link this one to that one, 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 to that one. It will keep the exact same order of my instructions, but it links 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4.
That's amazing.
Damn.
So you can
I need one like that for body shop items to release them.
Yeah, you can take all your initialization and you put it in the order that is most logical to you. Yeah, and then you just go, oh, link them all together. So you can see I have got complete spaghetti on here. And then I clicked ings init linker. Now, as the note says, can you spot the bug we introduced? So ings init linker links line 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, and the last instruction returns true. Unfortunately, our sub change uses remaining. Whether it returned true or false, they both linked to 5. So this BHAV can return true or false. We don't care. We treat both of the exits as true, and we continue on our merry way. Ings init linker has gone. I'm only linking up the trues. All the others go to errors. So if this BHAV should now return false for any reason, I'm going to throw an error. This should actually read return true. So little gotcha on that one.
So
that makes sense.
On the last command line, should the false return true then, or?
Yeah, this false, instead of going to an error, should also return true.
Oh.
This one here, we didn't care whether it returned true or false. It both went to line 5. Line 5 is then do another thing, and it returns true. Yeah? So effectively, both of these are going to return true. We changed it so that should that BHAV, and I don't know what it does, happen to return false, a new object initialization, throw an error. Object will be unplaceable.
Good to know.
So you do kind of have to. It's why I push all the subroutines to the end and I then check them manually. So.
Yeah, it's a handy feature, but you have to know what you're doing with it.
Yeah, it's really, really useful, especially if you've got my placement set flag 1, my placement set flag 2, my placement set flag 4. Maxis spray them all over the place, and you're trying to work out where can I place this, and it's like, is flag 8 set? Like, I don't know. Why didn't they put them in order? And even if you sort them, they won't be logically next to each other. But it's a way that you can just link everything up nicely in an init function. I always tend to cackle when I use it because it's like, yes. There was a question on append BHAV, which I think was Jason's.
I believe it was mine.
Yeah. It quite literally does what it says on the tin. So if we look at function load, it has one thing in it. If I'm in function init and I go append BHAV, it brings up a BHAV chooser, which Latmos, I will cover the obscurities of this in the next one. And I can pick a function load we just looked at. Function load, there we go. Okay. It literally copies all of the code out of function load, sticks it at the end of the BHAV as unreachable code, which now means that I can link it in or do what I want. If I have BHAV which is really small that calls another BHAV which is really small, because I thought there was going to be much more complicated logic and I want to merge them together, it's a way I can do that and then join them up. Sometimes function init will call the only thing it does is call a semi-global init, yeah, and you go, well, actually I don't want all that, half of that redundant code. I'm changing how the object works. I want it to be placed on coffee tables, so I don't want to set the cannot be placed on coffee table and then override it so it can be set on coffee table. In that case, I'll bring in BHAV I would append would be from the lot transition globals, functional init. That's added on whatever its code was, and I could then take out the clearing of the flag, have the setting of the flag for placing on a coffee table, push them all around using Zingnit's linker, and have what I want. It literally does what it says on the tin. It appends a BHAV onto the end of the current one.
Interesting.
So
That's helpful.
Useful for sticking the semi-global function in it onto the end of a local function in it and then deleting what you don't want. And it's useful for borrowing largest chunks of code from semi-globals without importing a semi-global. If you need it, you now know where it is. It's not the most common thing that you do.
Right. I mean, it's handy to know what it does, but I don't, for what I do, I probably wouldn't have a lot of practical uses for it.
So you know that when you switch a light on and off, it calls CT light on and CT light off. If you wanted to put those on a menu option, so turn light on, turn light off, what you'd actually want would be exactly the code from CT light on and CT light off. So you could write your own BHAV that says turn light on, and you could append the semi-global CT light on, and you'd then have all the correct code for switching the light on. That's what we're into.
Makes sense.
Into realms, into realms you don't want to think about. We're getting to the end. The GUIDs button, this one down here, is really useful. So I've got a routine here that says route to mailbox, and what it does is it attempts to find where the mailbox is on the lot and then sends the sim to the mailbox. Well, okay, you have to know that the GUID for the mailbox is 39cc F441, which is great because I wrote the code, I went off and I looked up what the object was, and I found its GUID, I wrote it down, I came and I copy and pasted it into the code. 3 weeks later, what on earth am I routing to? Because I can call this anything. Okay. Anything I like. So what does that do? What am I finding here? If I go click the GUIDs button, what you can't see, because it's popped out to the side of the screen, is a menu that says, let me see if I can bring this in. There you go. Create all packages, create current package, load index, save index. The one you want is create all packages. Click that. Wait for this little green bar to go and do its funky stuff. So it's now scanning through all of the Maxis objects, all of your downloads objects that you've got linked in, pulling out all of their GUIDs, pulling out all of their names. You've seen a list, which is 60% of the way through. Dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. It's built the list. Let's save it in the default place. And this has now seen object of type mailbox. Over here I have...
that's handy.
Still have the GUID, but it's telling me it's a mailbox. So when you create a memory, it's create memory 0x0059, whatever it is, and it's like, yeah, well I know that's, you know, add an argument or something, because that's what I'm doing today, but in 3 weeks' time I will have forgotten that it's memory, add an argument.
Does this only work for Maxis objects, or would it also work for custom objects?
It works for custom objects if you've got them enabled in the file table.
Oh, okay.
So under, oh god, I've got to remember where it is now. Extra preferences, file table. You can add your own entries in here. So I have my driving license globals and inteen added and other globals and my own memories. Yeah. So I can add my own code into SimPe's file table.
So
because I've done that, it will pull out.
Oh, okay. It will tell you, like, for example, if I had an accessory like a milk carton, that I entered the, just a random GID so that it spawns in the Sim's hand, would it recognize that as well, or the at a minimum the type of object that it is?
It would tell you that it was the accessory broadsword or accessory crossbow if you had all of your objects in a subdirectory and you pointed your file table at it. You can just point the file table to downloads and then it will find everything you've ever added.
Interesting. I will look into that.
And does that index stick through SimPe's sessions? Like if you open the package again, it will still have the correct labels?
It's stuck at what you've told it to today. So if you reopen SimPe tomorrow, it will have today's objects. If tomorrow Jason added a halberd, and open SimPe the day after, it would know about his crossbow and his broadsword, it wouldn't know about his halberd. But you can just re-click the button and get it to regenerate the list again.
Okay.
So it only knows about now. It doesn't know that I've changed it in the future, but if I change it in the future, I know I've changed it and I can retell it to generate that list.
Okay.
So, so as I say, generally if you're only pointing at Maxis, which most people are, do it once and then just forget about it. As you say there, it's got a set to next. Object of type 4F7A and 8F27, and they are controller date and controller group. So, and we're getting towards the end. The other special buttons: copy, paste, compare. I think I don't actually use them. I had to look up what they do. Copy appears to copy the entire BHAV to a memory buffer somewhere. Paste then pastes that last copy BHAV to the end of the current BHAV. So if doesn't matter where I am on here, I select copy, I go to a different BHAV, doesn't matter where I am on here, I click paste, Think about it. The entire BHAV that I had has now been appended as unreachable code down here. Note that that is exactly the same as doing append BHAV. Append BHAV runs a hell of a lot faster. I don't use them. I don't use copy paste. It's completely unintuitive version of append BHAV. And the compare button brings up another window somewhere. It's not really of much use if you're writing standalone objects. If you're writing code that overrides other behaviors, Maxis behaviors. So, see if I can something. Those junk food together. So my dispose junk food together overrides a whole load of standard Maxis objects for, disposed pizza only disposed pizza, disposed drink can only disposed drink can. This will take pizzas and drink can and everything together. So it overrides a number of Maxis BHAVs. You can tell that because the group numbers here are not FFFF. This compare button is now enabled, and if I click on it and say compare it to the current objects.package, it opens up a new window. Irritatingly, can. That's what is in objects.package, and that is what is in my code. So obviously I've changed this dramatically. I could laboriously go through this line by line and work out what had changed different. I really cannot see a use for that. That manual way. If you ever do want to know what is different between two BHAVs, can I recommend a tool called DBF Compare, which does a much better job of it.
Yes, it does.
Header buttons I've put on there just for sake of completeness. I don't intend to talk to them, and that should read, that's all, folks.
All right. Well, thank you, William. That was, I learned a lot today.
Yep. Me too.
Thank you.
Great.
So, well, thank you for bearing with me for what's almost an hour and a half. I don't envy Jason's editing abilities. And thank you for listening.